Oh, guys, you gotta see this cuteness here. She's not letting me record. When you think, oh, more scritches. Oh, more scritches. Oh, is that the good stuff? Oh, yes. Oh, yes. All right. Benvenuti a tutti. This is another second channel debrief. We'll be debriefing this video right here from last week on the main channel, Shannon Makes. This is Shannon Makes Something Else, the channel where I get to talk as much as I want, and you have been forewarned. So, with that being said, let's dive right into your comments from last Friday's video. We've got lots of fun comment categories. We have suggestions, what to do with the parquet flooring. We've got ideas for what to do with the knob and tube insulators. We're gonna dive a little bit into the history of the rosettes and that cool lamp that's over my pool table. People had thoughts on fluffers, on Santa Claus, on pie. We will not be doing YouTube prisoners this week. Y'all loved that comment category, but I don't want to overdo it. So instead, I'm introducing a new recurring guest on the channel, and that is the category You're in the Right Place. And then we also have, you know, as always, the miscellaneous comments that defy categorization. If that's you, congratulations on standing out in a crowd. As always, this is the abridged version, the shorter, public version. If you want the extended director's cut, that will be over on my Patreon if you want to listen to me blab for even longer. But with that said, let's jump right in to the first category, what to do with the parquet flooring. Now, I will say that I got a wide range of answers on what to do with it, and it does seem to be resulting from the fact that people have wildly different ideas of how big the tiles are and how much I have, but that's okay. It just added to the variety of answers. So I think one of the absolute one of the most popular suggestions that I got was to use the parquet flooring to cover a piece of furniture in some way. So Raven's Point said, when I saw the floor pieces, I instantly thought they'd be perfect for a herringbone floor pattern, maybe for a table, a kitchen countertop, a patio table, etc. Kathy Nolan says, I reckon a nice tabletop for the house could be made using those pieces of timber. Elmer Grove says the parquet were also used for end table and coffee tabletops. And then Masha, bringing in the Shannon Makes lore, said, hello, I think I saw an old video of yours with a marquetry tabletop from when you were in Montreal. Yes, thank you. A few of you remembered that this is something that I have actually done in the past, so I love that. We're bringing in the lore from the channel. I have mentioned it in a second channel video here, where I go through this room that I'm in right now and talk about how everything is thrifted, and there's a coffee table. I'm looking at it right now where I did this. I did this with paint sticks in a herringbone pattern. Did it to a few pieces of furniture like that, and then as I got more power tools, I graduated from using paint sticks to essentially making my own pieces of wood that I would then put in a herringbone pattern. This is one of my favorite things to do. I absolutely love it. It is definitely an option, and I do love that it kind of brings it full circle, something I've already done. Next, a lot of you suggested both trivets and or coasters. We've got Catherine, we've got Gagoom, we've got Skirt, and many, many more that I just can't fit on screen. And I think this is a very interesting idea, and I really like the idea of it, especially because I could really use some trivets, quite honestly. But this is the type of project that I would be doing after I completed another big project that used the majority of the wood flooring, and then if there were any leftovers, then I would use them to make trivets or coasters, because they're both quite small items, if you think about it. Even a trivet, which is the largest one, it's only like this big. It would take a very small amount of the wood that I have. So I think I would prefer to save it for a larger project, something that takes up the majority of the pieces. And then if I had leftovers, this could be a fun way to use it. A lot of people suggested using it as an accent wall. Now, again, this was something that it just never crossed my mind. I was thinking, oh, I should use it as a horizontal surface. And then some of you were like, well, why limit yourself to the horizontal? You have the vertical axis, you could use that too. Use it as an accent wall, a feature wall, a textured wall. So many fun ideas for using it on a wall. Something I will bear in mind. It's not a leading contender, but you know, I'm not using these immediately. It's gonna be a while before I get to it. So we're just gonna let the cogs stew on this for a while, and maybe they'll come up with something on the vertical plane. Then, in keeping with the history of the house, a lot of you mentioned using it as a section of the flooring. Now, some of you said I could do a whole room with it, but a lot of you also suggested using it as a border around the edge of a room. And now, if you are a patron, you will have just gotten the vlog where I was in Astoria and I toured this historical house, and they had a very nice, very fancy border exactly like this in their main sitting room. So it is definitely a thing. It would be historically appropriate for a house of my era, and I can actually think of, I've seen one other real estate listing in my area that specifically has this type of fun little border. As Veritano Vids pointed out, often people would put the border down around the outside where it would remain visible, and then the boards that would go in the middle would just be plain, kind of boring boards, because it was expected that you would put a rug on top of it and you wouldn't see that. I have seen that in a lot of examples of historical houses, so for sure it's absolutely a thing. Same thing, Cincinnati says in some old houses, I've seen parquet used to make a decorative pattern around the edges of a room. Another popular idea was to use it in some way, shape, or form in Cannell's Hobbit Hole nook corner, which I love that everyone is getting invested in this project. I got a lot of different ways to suggested to use it. So some people said I could use it as, you know, a feature wall in her nook. Some people said I could use it as some fancy flooring. Other people said I could use it as siding. A lot of people mentioned you could use it as shingles. So I love the idea. However, kind of what I'm thinking is Cannell's a dog. And she is absolutely not going to appreciate the fact that this very nice, very expensive, high quality hardwood flooring has been used in what is essentially just a fancy bed for her. So I think I would prefer to keep the parquet and use it somewhere that it's going to get a lot of use, somewhere where the fact that it's a hardwood is actually going to be, you know, going to be a feature. And yeah, it just feels a little bit, I hate to say it, but it feels a little bit wasted on the dog. You know I love her. You saw me cuddling with her at the beginning of this video. She is everything to me, and yet I don't feel like the parquet is necessarily going to be put to the best use if I use it in her corgi hiding hole nook. Also, because she's a little princess, she's a diva, and she wants soft, cuddly things. She absolutely has no interest in hard surfaces. So if I could make her like a little asylum style, padded walls, padded floor, padded ceiling, she would be thrilled. So she's definitely not going to appreciate the hardwood. I think the funniest response came from Ula Knapp, who said, what to do with the parquet flooring? Extreme Jenga time! As a fan of Jenga, and as somebody who has occasionally been heard to utter the exclamation, Jenga, I definitely appreciate this comment. Then we had one viewer who wanted to play around with the parquet math. So this person writes, if each piece is 1 by 3 inches, it takes a minimum of 48 for a square foot, unless of course you do a herringbone or some other odd pattern. So say 5 per square foot. I would think that huge sack should have enough for an entryway or a rug style insert in a hardwood floor. I had a few of you who also were equally suggesting various ways to calculate how much I had, And yeah, I fully agree. The way I would have gone about it is very similar to the way this viewer suggested. I would have done it in a slightly different order, but essentially it's the same thing. So I know some of you also have parquet flooring and you said, I don't know how much I have, I don't know how to use it. Well, hopefully now, not only do you have some ideas on how to use it, but also maybe this can help you calculate it. I haven't done it because we're not there yet. We are so far away from the moment where I'm going to be using it that I was like, this would be a waste of my time to sit down and calculate how much I have. I'm going to wait until we're a little bit closer to the moment of using it. Next up, what to do with the insulators from the knob and tube. So the main category, the one that everyone suggested, was wind chimes. So many suggestions to use wind chimes. I think it is a creative and good idea, and also I will definitely not be doing it because I do not particularly like the sound of wind chimes. Some of them are okay. There are some that I don't hate, but I would never really voluntarily probably put a wind chime in the garden, especially not one that had this sound. It's really windy in Nova Scotia, guys. Those things would be going off non-stop, and I think it would be very grating on my ear. Also, one of you commented that the birds don't like wind chimes, which I didn't fact check that. I don't know if it's true, but I could see it being true, and if that's the case, I think I would rather have the birds than the wind chimes. So absolute love to everybody who suggested this. I think it's a really great idea for some people in some regions, but not for me personally in Nova Scotia, where they would be sounding nonstop. Next biggest suggestion was some form of beaded curtain. So this person writes, use it as a wind chime and a curtain, like in a changing area or a room divider, a keep out area. Susan says it would make a cool divider wall by threading them onto rebar and putting a wooden bead or something similar in between. There were lots of variations on this idea of using it as, when I think of it as like the 70s style beaded room dividers that, again, if I don't like the sound of wind chimes, I am definitely not going to like the sound of having to clink through these to get into a room. So again, very creative idea. Probably not the direction that I personally will be going. I actually really liked the comment by 98 Zai. They wrote, the insulators threaded through wire attached to some planks could make a neat privacy screen for the garden. My brain wants to say incredibly annoying bead curtain, but I think everyone would hate that. It would make a great intruder alarm though. Yeah, it would be best served as a burglar alarm more than a beaded curtain, because that would be a great way to keep me out of a room. But I did like some of you had these similar ideas where it was threaded not through string that would like move, but more through a fixed element, wire attached onto planks. It wouldn't make noise, but it could potentially be a nice sort of privacy screen or a similar feature like that. So that was kind of a fun idea. Then we have a few people suggested using it as flower frogs or bud vases. So this is a really interesting idea. Somebody here mentioned that you would maybe seal one end potentially with wax, and then you could use it to hold some buds or some dried flowers. That's a really interesting idea, and it also kind of seems similar to me as the one person who suggested that I could use it to wrap ribbon around. So not only would it be practical, it would be keeping my ribbon from getting tangled, but it would also be like a really aesthetic display. You could set it out in the sewing room and it would be a really cute display of some vintage ribbons. Really liked all those ideas. I'm not a big flower person in general, but I do like the creative idea of using it as a flower frog, a bud vase. Good ideas. Then we've got a lot of kind of miscellaneous one-off suggestions. So somebody suggested using it as pegs on a coat tree or a coat rack. Great idea. However, let's remember that I got these 4 stunning original Art Nouveau antique coat hangers that belong on a coat tree. And I will, if I'm going to make a coat tree of any sort, I'm absolutely going to use these that are, a little more fitting to the style of my house. I think they're stunning. I like the idea, the creativity behind using these as a coat tree or a coat rack, but it's just a little too rustic for the vibe that I personally am going for. A couple of you suggested using it to make candlesticks or like candle holders. A good idea. However, I think you are maybe not understanding the scale of the holes in them, because these would not be suited to hold anything larger than a birthday cake candle. They're quite small, in fact. So, good idea, not quite the right scale. I did really enjoy this comment that said, I'm a firm believer that anything can be a Christmas tree ornament, and then they suggested that I could use them to decorate a Christmas tree. I think that's kind of fun. I'm not sure I will be doing it necessarily, but maybe like one or two. That could be a good idea. I do love Christmas. I do love Christmas tree decorations, so don't rule it out. Then Diamond Dust and Verdigris had a bunch of fun suggestions. They signed off by saying, I don't know, I'm weird, so here's some weird ideas. And then they suggested, yeah, the coat rack, some really unique, crafty, inlaid picture frames, a very unique garland, and then they also kind of had this idea related to holding flowers or faux flowers, but they suggested, can you stack a bunch of them Lincoln log style to make a kitschy, narrow, opened vase? Now that was an interesting idea. Again, I'm not sure I will be doing it, but hey, absolute bonus points for creativity. You say you're weird and these are some weird ideas. I say you're thinking outside of the Lincoln log box. The most creative ideas, however, I have to say, go to Suzette and Frida. So Suzette says, insulators would probably make awesome warp-weighted loom weights. Now, I do not weave or spin, but I could ask Evie her thoughts on that. They might make fantastic loom weights, so you never know. If I do get into spinning one day, could be a good way to use it. And then Frida says, I don't know how heavy your insulators are, but I could use them as weights when I do kumihimo braiding. Now, full disclosure, I had to look up kumihimo braiding because I wasn't sure what it is. But as soon as I saw it, it's a style of Japanese braiding that's done often for bracelets and belts and such. And I was like, this is what I did when I was a kid with the plastic lanyards. Like, I made these when I was a teen. It was all the rage. Although I will say that I usually stuck with the simpler ones, and there are much more complicated designs here. So that could be an idea. If any of you are into this type of braiding, you could use them as weights. Okay, let's look at the love for the rosettes and the pool table lamp, because one of the first comments that I read from Pompeii Ash, great name by the way, Pompeii Ash, who said not enough people are talking about how cool the rosette lamp label is. You need to frame and display the card and a little explanation and display it in the attic. Yeah, that was my first reaction too, was that not a lot of people are talking about what I thought was one of the coolest segments of this video, which then, led me on a reflection spiral. And I was just thinking about, people watch my channel for a variety of reasons, but I think there's a large percentage of people that watch the renovation videos because they like renovation, just in general. They like the hard work, they like seeing the progress that's made, they live in a house, they can relate, whatever it is, but they are here just more for general renovation. And then I think there's another large category of people that are watching because they enjoy the renovation, but they specifically are enjoying the historical restoration aspect of it. They're into the history, uncovering all these mysterious features about the house, trying to learn about how it looked like when it was originally built and when was it built and who built it and all these fun little historical touches. And I don't think that one way is better or right or wrong. I think that they're all valid reasons to watch the channel. But I do suspect that the people that are interested in the historical aspect of it will just be getting more from my videos. They might enjoy them better. My videos might serve them more as entertainment because that's why I'm interested in it. I chose a historical house on purpose because I love the history side of it. That's why I got an old house, and I love trying to uncover all these clues and figuring out what does it mean and what does it tell me about how my house used to look 100 years ago? All that kind of stuff. So maybe that's one of the reasons there weren't so many comments on the whole rosette lamp situation. Although I will also say it could just be because I specifically asked for ideas on the other things, the parquet flooring and the insulators, so maybe people's brains just more naturally went there. And in the end, I did actually get a fair amount of comments about people enjoying the history section. Eon Arts writes, I love that you go into the history of some of your finds. The rosette was a good one. Gigi Phoenix writes, love how your house is making you into a time detective. How cool to have that light fixture in the attic and know its story. Now remember, full disclosure, we don't know that that label was from that lamp. If I am going to, create the narrative of my house and romanticize it a little bit in my own personal canon of the house, then the headcanon says that light goes with that rosette. But there is not actually any proof of that. I just found it very interesting that there was a large overlap. Who knows? Maybe John Foreman was the person who sold all of the knob and tubing. That could very well be too, because he was definitely very much into the anything having to do with electricity, electrics, that hardware related to that, all that kind of stuff. So we may never know. And then the cherry on top, we've got Hubcap 4K HDR Gameplay, who simply writes, what is a rosette? Like I said, we, the creator, can't see where you are when you write these comments unless you personally add a timestamp in. So maybe they were just very impatient and it was at the top of the segment about the rosettes and they didn't want to wait for an answer, and so they just shot off a comment. The Creative Genie says, not Shannon with the X-rated reference, LMFAO. I had to rewind because I was convinced I heard you wrong. A lot of people loving the offhanded fluffer comment. Jamie says they nearly spit out their coffee at the comment. As somebody with the same sense of humor, but a career that requires me to behave, teacher here, I love the surprise, naughty humor that hits out of the blue. Yes, a lot of comments enjoying the kind of offhanded humor that people were not expecting. I love a good X-rated reference every now and then. I find it hilarious. Generally doesn't make it onto the channel because it's a little bit too explicit, but here it was just implicit enough that if you knew, you knew. And if you didn't know and you were the type of person that would have found this joke offensive or in poor taste, you probably wouldn't have known what a fluffer was to begin with. And so I'm happy to say I did not get a single pearl clutching comment about it. Everybody who commented just loved it. Okay, so I have told you before that often as I am editing a video, I will be in the process of editing and I'll be like, there's gonna be a whole category of comments about this section that I'm editing right now, and I can kind of foresee it. This was a section that I did not see coming at all, and it was Insulation Santa. Oh. Great Aunt Liz writes, Shannon, slings bag of blown in on back. Me, insert Santa joke here. Shannon, oh ho 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 ho. Jade Morgan also commented on similarity, saying at 420, I totally expected Joyeux Noel after the ho ho ho's. Yeah, that one took me completely by surprise. I did not foresee the Santa references coming, but you know what? I aim to please and serve, so call me Santa Claus if you want, although in this case I am more likely to be bringing coal as a present because that is what my fireplaces run on. Then, as I said, the video takes place on Pi Day, so naturally there were a lot of comments about the pie. I will say a lot of people were confused. They didn't understand what Pi Day was, and at first I was a little bit puzzled because I did specifically say in the video, and in fact I was actually really happy that Shannon in the past had the presence of mind to specifically give the context that it is March 14th, which means it is Pi Day. I thought that was very explicit, and yet there was a lot of confusion in the comments, and then I thought about it and I was like, wait, you know what? It probably is from all the Europeans who don't write their dates the same way. So, you know, us in North America, we like to be the odd ones out, and we write our dates month, day, year. I think it's a horrible system. I'm not going to stand behind it. I think it's a horrible way to write the dates. But because that's the way we write them, that means that March 14th is written 3.14.2025. 3.1415926, it is the digits of pi, so all the math nerds out there know that March 14th is Pi Day, and a lot of people just coming in loving the pie, but also a lot of people suggesting their own various twists on it. So if you are a pecan pie aficionado and you want to try some of these, the most Canadian suggestion was that some people say that they sub out either half or all of the corn syrup for maple syrup. Very tasty. I bet it's really tasty. I have always hesitated to try that because maple syrup tends to be a little more runny, a little less viscous than corn syrup, and I was afraid it would mess with the texture of the pie, but so many people, enough people are saying that they do it, that I might just give that a try because, you know, I would much prefer to use maple syrup over corn syrup. Judy Montel says that their sister-in-law uses date syrup instead of corn syrup, so there's another alternative. A lot of people saying that they add vanilla to their pies, which I often do too. I don't have a lot of baking supplies at the Nova Scotia house, so I don't have any vanilla on hand, but I've done it. It always adds a nice little depth. And then a few people also saying they add the bourbon to it, which I love me a good bourbon pecan pie. I associate it with like Southern United States cuisine, but that could be completely off base. I don't know. I could be wrong on that one, but I don't stock bourbon on hand. However, if any of you want to make me some bourbon pecan pie, I will not say no because it is delicious. And then lastly, the last variation is one that I would like to try myself as well. It comes from Gabby Does Cosplay Stuff, who says that they make a cranberry pecan tart every year for the holidays. They always get tons of compliments on it, and that the berries cut the sweetness just enough to make the pecan pie even better. Color me interested in trying this variation. Not only does cranberries kind of go seasonally with the time of year when I also tend to make pecan pies, but I love cranberries. I love the concept of the tart kind of cutting the sweetness. So that one, if we do another Shannon Bakes segment, I'm gonna have pecan pie with cranberries. In fact, I think I have like 4 bags of them in the freezer right now because I stock up whenever they come in to the grocery stores around here. All right, let's do an entire segment on the mantles because this again was another one where I expected more comments on the mantle. I thought it was a very cool discovery, but the discovery of the mantle is very fun. Murky Heron says that mantle makes me wonder if it would be worth it to strip the paints off the ones in the rooms because pretty. Let's put a pin in that one. We're going to come back to it. Fiona Grant says we had a black marble mantelpiece in the 1870s villa I grew up in here in New Zealand. Yes, so I suspect that all of our mantles are black. I know for a fact that they are all painted over with white paint. So goodness knows what's under there. I know that under at least one of them is something black because the paint has worn off. And that makes me think that they are probably all the same black marble mantle because they all have the same design. They all have the same sort of carvings done. They all match. And the 3 that are in the house in their original positions matched the design of the one that's in the attic, which makes me think that the one in the attic is also original to the house and that it comes from the room that clearly is actually missing a mantle. It has had its fireplace section boarded up. We're going to get into that in a second. But first of all, I think they're all black because that just makes sense. So think about it. They were originally burning coal. These are all coal fireplaces. They are much shallower than a normal fireplace. Now, I suspect they were first fire burning and then at some point slightly later got converted to coal burning, still way in the past. But I think there was a conversion that happened there. And that when that conversion happened, they used these black mantelpieces because coal is freaking dirty. It's notoriously dirty. It puts soot everywhere. And if you had a mantle that was white or cream or kind of any other color, it would get very dirty very quickly. So it feels like the only way to have an aesthetically pleasing mantle when you're burning coal is to have a very dark colored mantelpiece. So it makes sense to me that they were all black. But it also makes sense to me if we look at this comment by Castle Cat Jerome, who says, I am flabbergasted that somebody painted over marble. Yeah, I am equally flabbergasted, but as this other commenter writes, that black marble mantle makes me think of doing a dark academia room with that piece. Therein lies the problem, because if you have black mantles, it really limits the color scheme, what you can do with that room. So I am equally horrified that somebody painted over these mantelpieces, and yet I can absolutely understand why they did it. They probably went, you know what? I'd like to do the white trim, the white baseboards, and the white mantelpieces, and then it opens up. I can paint the room so many more colors. Whereas if your mantelpiece is dark, especially with the sort of aesthetics that were popular in the last few decades, I feel like the options were, oh, if you have a dark mantle, the whole room has to be dark. And not everybody likes that. So I do get why they painted it white. And I am also horrified. And as many of you queried, posited, questioned, I would like to try and strip the paint off of the fireplaces, but I'm going to have to do a lot of research, because if I remember correctly, marble is fairly porous. I feel like I'm always hearing people say don't use marble for countertops because it can stain very easily because it is very porous, which makes me worry that the paint might have, like, even if I strip the paint, I might get still some paint left in the pores of the marble, and that it would just permanently be white, kind of speckled white. I'm not sure, so I'm going to be doing some research. Nutshell version, it would be absolutely lovely if I could manage to safely strip these back and get them looking the way they originally looked, and then finding a paint scheme to go with it that did not make all of the rooms look like a dark academia library core vibe. One or two, sure, but maybe not all of them. Some miscellaneous comments that defied categorization. So Beth Weingartner, who I recognize because she has her own YouTube channel of historical costuming and sewing, writes, that moment when all the pecans floated to the surface of the pie. Yes, absolutely. Friend, I was walking around the grocery store getting supplies for the pie, and I was already planning out that shot, because it's one of my favorite moments when you make pecan pies is you put the pecans in and then you pour the syrup in, and then slowly they kind of just bloop, 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 they pop up to the top. And I was like, this is gonna be a fantastic shot. I'm gonna put it on a tripod. I'm gonna get a time lapse, and it's gonna be so satisfying. And it absolutely was, and I'm so glad that Beth noticed and shouted it out, because it made me very happy. Lisa McFadden writes, every time you clicked the insulators, my wiener dog would jump up from a sound sleep and was alert. It made me chuckle in Canadian. What is not to love about this comment? We've got the cute wiener dog. We've got him reacting to the video, which I love when people tell me how their pets react to my videos. And we've got the Shana Makes lore, the inside reference, chuckling in Canadian. So 100 points for that really fun comment. Good News writes, I love PBS Time with Shannon Makes. We have Phil Music Hour, Nest Show and Tell, Baking with Shannon, How to Renovate, First Aid for Your Floorboards, and Finding Lost Treasures, all with amazing time slots, sure to bring you education and enjoyment. And if not, please keep scrolling, because we don't need an ugly peanut gallery here. Okay, thanks, bye. And then taking the place this week of YouTube Prisoners, because like I said, I don't want to overdo that section. Everyone really enjoyed it, but we're just going to do like a monthly roundup for YouTube haters. So in its place today, we're going to have the category I'm calling You're in the Right Place, because these viewers have found my channel, and based on their comments, they are very much in the right place. So we've got Jeno26Floor, who put a laughing emoji and said, roof syrup. That right here is why I watch this channel. Jeno, you are in the right place. Linda Royale writes, pretty cool to find the ad and to be able to research John Foreman and have a light in the attic that just might be connected to him. Happy Pi Day. So you are digging the historical archaeology that I'm doing in my videos. You really enjoyed the research. You are in the right place. Zoe Tasia says, I love how much you thrift and conserve. It isn't easy, but you take the time and care to do it. Yes, here on Shannon Makes, we are all about taking far more time to try to conserve something rather than running to the store to buy something new to replace it. It's better for the environment. It's better for your wallet. It's better for your soul. You, Zoe, are in the right place. And much in the same lines, we've also got Mike Ballard and Jennifer, who are equally loving seeing us reusing the flooring in the attic, repairing the boards instead of replacing them. Mike writes, most YouTubers just trash it and buy new lumber. You guys are in the right place. Thank you so much for appreciating the recycle and use mentality. It is far more time consuming. I will be honest. It's way more time consuming to do it like that than you could just, it's so much easier to just buy new. But where's the fun and romance in that? If I wanted a new house, I would have just bought a new house. Now, obviously there are some moments where the wood is just too far gone. You're going to see that in tomorrow's main channel video where things are just so rotten beyond belief. There is no choice but to replace it. And that is for the good and the integrity of the historical house. You have to replace things sometimes, but if it's just a question of adding some wood glue and tape and then boom, you have a repair that's going to be strong and going to, hold you for the next several decades, why not just do that? Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for this video. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will catch you tomorrow on the main channel. Okay, thanks. Bye. Boop. Oh, silly face. Oh, the silly face. Oh, look at that silly face. I gotta record, Peanut. I gotta record. Here.